structures. I just wondered, where is the business case? And especially when thinking about what telco providers typically do, in prior times they sell you minutes of service. Now they sell you data an amount of data, typically just flat rate. So do you see any chance that there is telco services around that will provide more than just voice or data services and provide means for edge AI?
I think a lot of us pay a lot of money for tokens.
Yeah, but not to telco, but not to telco providers. The question is, who is placing the servers right there where the latency is low? I see this in the industrial setting. If you're doing something like a multi-tier architecture, like a smart factory, and then you're moving your things into the cloud, some things you have to do on-premise because they're latency dependent. But all those scientific examples, you motivate your papers, it's more like mobile computing. You walk through the city, your services follow you, your models with your friends is following you.
Hasn't happened, right?
No, it won't happen. It didn't happen in the last 30 years, and I say it won't happen the next 30 years.
And I think, coming back to, I pay a lot of money for tokens, like really a lot, and not just for me, also for the team. And I think if it makes a difference where the tokens are processed, the people who have gotten a lot of money from my tokens will put something on the edge.
So it depends all on Albrecht.
And the other people who spend a lot of money on tokens. So I think at the moment we see, we have now some of the providers, they have moved not really to the edge, but to an American mindset, very much to the edge, to Frankfurt. So they have moved servers there to be on GDPR. And so basically whenever somebody is paying for it, they will move it to the edge. And I think the other thing from the personal stuff, I think I talked earlier about the rucksack. I think the assumption is we can run a really big model on your personal device, like sort of something with, basically if you have 1 terabyte of RAM, which at the moment I think a year ago, or basically 2 years ago when we started the project, it seemed quite feasible. Now it's quite expensive, but sort of 5 years down the road, I think sort of what you get now from Anthropic in the cloud, you get on a mobile device. So you may run it yourself and then you may save the money for the tokens.
Yeah, and I think everybody probably heard that Nokia and Nvidia, they have signed a long agreements recently, right? And then I think what the question you're asking, the business plan and also the kind of a vision they have already tells a little bit about the future, potentially telecom's vision about revamping the data control and also the value of data on the telecom infrastructure is already going there. And then as I think especially when nowadays, like what Albrecht you mentioned about different kind of models, when they move to the kind of closer to the cars, to the infrastructure, telecom infrastructure is actually one of these important entry points that everybody needs to actually, probably later have to, rather than just paying actually for like every B2B, not actually B2C context, but more B2B context, that they will actually earn a lot by charging the other service providers that are facing us. So in that sense, if you're asking this $1 million question, where the money come from, I think I don't have a crystal ball, but I would say that is actually where you actually will see a lot of things happening in that domain, where when people are in the car, in the all kind of advanced media services and using a lot of AI, and then you will actually generate a lot of demands for speed up.
But I have a déjà vu. This is what we said 30 years ago in mobile computing. Exactly the same words. Just we didn't use we used exactly the same words except AI 30 years ago. So what's changed?
I think. Sorry that you're that far out. So I think I completely agree with one point that we will use it while we are mobile. I will also agree with you that telecoms are too slow to understand it. I think we are using WhatsApp. I think once you have SMS in a network and they had it, the step to WhatsApp would have been not really far, but they didn't. And the social networks, they didn't. So the telecom missed basically all possible trains that are around. So why would they not miss this train?
Yeah, good move. Yeah, Stefan.
I don't know why. I have no answer to that. But I have an idea, or have an idea of when we talk about I came up with this medical domain and medical IoT and medical extreme edge stuff and so on. And so who will pay for that? I think it depends on whether these become medical products or not, certified medical products. And if so, then the health insurance providers will pay for that, and in the end we will be that. All the patients will be, all the members of the health insurance will pay for these services. So there will be probably quite a few different business models, would be my impression, depending on applications.
And I think there's one point with the payment which I find interesting. I think within basically 12 months, at least in my university environment, in my private environment, people have moved from paying 0 for the internet and not even for their email client, and being annoyed by, basically they get a free email client and they did not pay the €3 because they said, oh, I can live with the advertising. Those people are now paying the €20 or the €90 to get the tokens. So I think we have seen a shift, and I think I would have guessed this not so quick. The shift was really quick. Like, I think people have subscriptions with Claude, people have subscriptions with ChatGPT, people have subscriptions with basic graphics tools, because productivity is there.
Well, and they learned. I mean, they didn't give things or access to a free network like it was with the internet, but they did it like every good drug dealer did. You get the first 2 shots for free to see how good the stuff is, and then they start to charge aggressively. And maybe that's one way to do the whole thing. Yeah, and they are successful.
And I guess one thing probably to point out, in recent years we have seen this subscription business model coming up, and nowadays I think probably you already see that this is also getting to the potentially future for tokens. But then I think these kind of changes of behavior for payments and also for financial version of these digital services somehow already adjusted why this did not happen 20 years ago when there was a existing mobile cloud kind of architecture, but then telecom or whatever, any middle player in the middle did not actually succeed to get the values they deserve to have. But I think now slightly, I think the new generation already creates this kind of new opportunity for them. But I agree with you. Can they catch it? This is actually an open question mark. Yeah, even though there is actually already things happening now, I believe most of us actually already are on the subscription for all kind of things, and then that's the future.
And I think the thing is, you have real productivity gains, and I'm not sure what university is at the moment not negotiating for deals for their students. I think you will probably not run a university in a year. Basically, as universities had libraries in history, we have now, you have to provide a language model to your students. And so I think and if you're a company, I think Office 365, Gemini, I don't know a company that's seriously in the business of either building software or doing digital solutions that are not trying to get the best deals. And most, I know the startups, they all have multiple subscriptions because it becomes business essential. And then it's very, very different from offering sort of a search engine.
I realize that also, that all universities try to negotiate contracts, or let's say, in the north we are not so rich, in northern Germany we are not so rich, so we have to build consortia and negotiate something in this context. But the result typically is, at least in our case, is that we get some third-class LLM which you can use for more or less free. And which even doesn't have MCP access or something similar. So I'm sorry, the language model tells you, I'm sorry, I can't tell you what time it is. I don't know that. So, and I mean, students try that 3 times and then they switch back to the free Gemini or whatever version.
Right, there are other people in the room. Thanks for picking this up. I was about to ask.
I So recently there is a phenomenon that I have been discussing with some of my colleagues, that more and more people who are using these large language model systems, they are getting into specialized models which they professionally use or use day-by-day basis. So it starts with the exploratory, okay, I have a ChatGPT subscription and a cloud subscription and everything, but now it becomes that, okay, there is an unified space like GitHub Copilot or something that actually gives much more flexibility to choose these other models and everything. My question would be, do you think, and on your experience, that there is enough demand and enough money in the market that people are willing to use these models, and we use these different kind of systems that everyone is developing right now, that actually improves and keeps improving people's lives and jobs? Do you think, like, what's the future in this? Because my understanding is, personally, it gets to a peak and then it gets to a plateau, where the plateau is like, okay, I am okay with have like 60 euros or 100 euros subscription, but more than that, it's too much that it does not even give too many extra benefits that ChatGPT does not give extra benefits to cloud, right?
So I think it's really on the value it creates, and I think if you look at the moment at the valuations of those companies, it's very clear, if they are not replacing workers, the whole thing is a bubble. So I think if I basically get my stuff 30% faster done, then maybe sort of a few hundred euros a month. If I can replace staff as a company, we are talking different levels of. And so I think it's really the question if the promise comes through. And I think I agree, I guess sort of the base technology that will sort of plateau at some point, but the things we talked about, sensor integration, personalization, and that stuff, there is still, it's not really clear that this is plateauing. I think basically having the best model, that's probably, but if you look at the moment, when I switched last, I think in February or so, I canceled my GitHub Copilot and moved for all the development stuff to Claude. And I think it's not just the model, it's also sort of the linking to stuff as you had it. I think that it's not just whether you speak the protocol or not, how well you speak the protocol, how well you get basically the stuff, how well you can sort of remote control your browser. And I think sort of for me, a lot of the innovation is going to happen on top of the base model. So basically the connectors, the APIs, the getting stuff together, and then we'll see. And I think it may be in the end that the base model is something you can run locally, like Olama or whatever, with something on top. But then the real intelligence comes in at this, and that's I think where the new companies also will be created. That where basically you don't need to train some, you just have to have a great idea how to put stuff together.
Well, and from your talk, I took home that this can also complement the individuals by seeing that Kristen, for instance, always forgets parentheses or messes up the indices. So I have a model which somehow cares more, checks more for these errors. Other people might have other errors. I totally buy this when this comes to something like supporting technical tasks, whatever. But when you're starting to think about personalized models, and just think of you're entering the USA, and instead of giving away your account and or your social media names, now they just ask you about your personal model just to see where did you go shop, would you rather shop from China, the US, whatever stuff. So we're starting to getting even more naked than we were before. Is this also some part of the model, or is this something where we could separate things? You can keep the mic. Hot potato.
So I think there are many more questions once you have this model. Does it wholly belong to you, or do the 8 or 10 or 12 hours you work for a company, does that part belong to the company, and if you leave, it's deleted out of your model, or is this sort of fused with the team that you have a joint model? If you have kids, are they inherit the family model? Is there something like an individual model and a family model? And basically, when I was writing the proposal for this, I was having sort of a few pages on this, and then I talked to friends, and we decided this is never getting through any ethics review ever. So scrap that part, even so that's probably from a research perspective most interesting. Basically also if you basically who should have access, or can you protect access to this? And I think some of the things where what we build now is really deliberately deleting a lot of stuff, and so you have to really query it. But obviously then people will create an interesting set of queries to run against the personal model to get sort of your right wing, left wing, whatever sort of.
Yeah, and maybe one point responding to that is that in the future probably we will have actually small models that actually come together in our devices, and then you have actually also kind of the parental model somehow living in the clouds or whenever, maybe the local clusters. And then these small models actually has a lot of restrictions where we need to respect the data privacy of the human side. And then for what Christian, you mentioned that, if you go to US, they ask you to upload certain model, maybe till that point, the small model, what they can do on your device is that they can only answer yes or no type of questions. Have you been doing this or not? But then rather than actually giving all the detailed raw data activities to the log list. And that's actually one way to ensure that, in the future, if we go that way, and then it should be very, very much actually paying attention what kind of things we provided out of your personalized model.
Yeah, well, you basically said everything. I would say, especially if we think about this, this extreme edge thing that more and more people have in mind and think about. So, very low level and very small AI things. Then obviously the approach makes a lot of sense. It wouldn't work in any other way. Yeah? So you have many situations where you just get very, very basic answers on a very, very detailed level. Which you then have to use in further models and work on that. And I mean, for that purpose, we have this edge cloud continuum thing to work on that.
That's all. Sorry. Okay.
Yeah. What comes to my mind is maybe we have to work with the models. So, can I tell the model, forget about this? And this, what I tell you now, never ever tell anybody else. This is my safe. I can only use it. Can I talk to my model and restrict the model and even tell the model not to do this, but do this? And never ever talk to this guy, yeah? Things like that. If it is a personal model, it should be possible. So basically, I learned that we have to understand much better what that animal is in order to work on it and make it for us usable.
Any comments?
And then 5 minutes later say, oh, I'm sorry, that was a mistake.
Yeah. Take back. Yeah.
But I think if you talk at the moment to security researchers, that's basically what they publish about. It's basically breaking models.
Yeah.
And I think for our project, what was really a point is, can we strip it in a way that you cannot reconstruct it? That you can basically, or if it answers it, it's definitely not your answer and it can't provide provenance of it. So that you basically, it may say something which is sort of politically wrong, but then you can also have, oh, it's hallucinating. So I think this question of deniability, but I think in the end it's something, obviously with the architecture you build stuff, and one of the takes from why I think the rucksack is a cool idea is because I can leave the rucksack in Germany when I travel to the US. I can switch my rucksack off. I think this is that's why I think running this model not in the cloud, but only having sort of protocol access to the cloud for the other stuff, but running my model on a very personal device is something I want to explore. I'm not sure how well this works.
But then you have to combine models somehow.
Well, but I think we know how to do that.
And which one wins? My personal one or the other one? Which information is the correct one?
Okay, one thing like federating with the models, but the other thing is also the intelligent choice of knowing which models is suitable at a distant time or place, and like passports with different visas. So typically, if you're traveling a lot, you might have different passports, and we all know that the same truth is different depending where you are. And so having models that reflect this is good. But I once had a friend who was traveling through Africa on a small plane with all the visa throughout Africa, and then the one with the visa to South Africa. Years ago, still apartheid time, so it wasn't a safe thing to have the visa for South Africa when you were in the middle of Africa. And when opening his bag, both passports flipped out. Long story short, he spent 3 months in a very nice prison, and this is not a good thing to do. But how can we make sure that this does not happen with more sensitive information that we carry around? And still, I guess, there are more questions than answers, right?
And maybe I don't think we have immediate answer for that, but then at least this is probably where we are now looking at. We should look at what we go beyond existing practice, like we have a separation of personal device, the edge, the cloud, and then this is where actually nowadays there is another term called hybrid AI, which is slowly into forming. But then this is still a buzzword, and I don't think we should actually just be confused about it. But the essence, the problem is what you just raised. This hybrid AI is supposed to actually be able to solve the problems that we are now start pumping into. For example, like which one of the AI models that's sitting remote or sitting locally, they can decide your critical, I would say, future. Either you are going to a nice journey or you end up in prison or something like that.
I have a question related to, I think, to the discussion, especially coming back to sustainability, to the costs of operation and what is good enough. So, related to the previous question, actually, shouldn't we also look at the models, not just for cooperation, but also to limit the context, limit the data which they would use in different contexts? Because if the, let's say, generic goal models, they of course learning from all data possible. But if we are talking about more like personalized agents or multi-agents with more local context, why, for example, should we take the whole context from everything? If we are looking to the working maybe profile, so it should look maybe only working related stuff to the person.
No, it's just...
Okay, yeah. Or if it's private, so it should look only into private context in this case. So we come to maybe more like limited context models.
I'm doubtful that it works. There are two reasons, I think. One, separating private life and other life. So by separating different ones of your lives, I think people who try this is really hard. And I think if we remember circles, that was Google tried to do that with a social network in around 2003-04. And there was a lot of research around that. And basically one of the big takeaways was our lives are so much intertwined, and not just for academics who don't have friends, so it's just their colleagues. So, but I think it's really so much intertwined that it's really hard to do that. And I think the other thing is that the winner takes it all. I think we have seen it through the digital. Basically, Google was not much better than Alta Vista, but it was a bit better. Bing was not much worse than Google, but it didn't really work. So I think we had seen this that we gravitate towards the best solution, and then once the best solution is big enough, the others have a really hard time catching up. And I think that's my take on the investments that go at the moment into models, is really that it knows that Christian wants a certain support when programming. It basically, this is the value, that the locking in of people. And I think we see that they are playing even now. I think now ChatGPT has introduced that you can export a page as a whole PDF. Exporting it in the whole communication from Claude to ChatGPT is harder. You can do sort of some. So I think they're sort of, and I think also with the protocols where you can. So I think this is sort of. I would not. I think we and you said it. I think at the universities we have this discussion. There are the free models or something our compute center hosts, and the students try it, and then they say, oh, I rather go working and buy the cloud subscription. I work 2 or 3 hours more a week and get the cloud subscription rather than using this because it will save me the time.
Yeah, I have one more query in in the ads network and the extreme ads networks that both of you guys discussed. So you mentioned that more and more large tech industry companies are adopting to the edge technology, and you also mentioned the extreme edge actually is connecting more and more perspective of the networks and how the networks can be seen as a biological entity or a silicon-based entity, like all these aspects. But what could be the use case for general consumers? Because as much as I can see that these Amazon and Google are investing into these, but these are not products based on marketing that is, okay, this is an edge product or this is an edge cloud product, something. It can be something like, okay, I have a Google Home that have a technology for IoT and it's connecting to clouds and giving something, or Alexa or something like that. But that is like the edge as a technology is not being sold to the customers or general consumers. So is it like a niche product for the business to business, or like the large institute companies that will be using this technology for their own thing, or is it like more generalized for the future? Okay, when there would be a technology that is consumable by general.
Indeed, maybe I can first respond by saying that actually, personal opinion, edge is not supposed to be a standalone part in the future. I think it will actually be somehow submerged into what's the future of the more kind of a fluent computing kind of infrastructure. So, and I think it's actually in the future probably we would not actually distinguish things so kind of separately, even though in academia we would like to have a clear definition. This is the edge, that's your cloud, and this is my extreme IoT or whatever. But I would say in that sense, back to your question, the downside of that is that clearly big tech has treating edge into their ecosystem more like one of the easy channel to access more data from the end customers, and also potentially business value they can resell to other third parties. And then in that sense, that means that the direct benefits to end customers, probably we won't see that actually really coming out in the upcoming years. Maybe research-wise, you still see people actually doing research, but then it is not supposed to be actually, personally speaking, actually a new kind of erupting business ecosystem on the edge, which is actually not a bad thing, because every technology has this trend up and down. It doesn't have to be business success as the only judgment whether this is worthwhile or not. Okay.
But then we're getting two dimensions. So the one dimension is classical edge computing. I'm arguing with latency, so I place things near where they have to be done. Then I have this continuum up to the cloud, and then I'm looking at Albrecht's argument, the rucksack argument. I just carry the things, I have locality. So I have things which are private, which stay with me because they're private. I have things which stay in a local legal setting, so like GDPR in the EU, so they have to stay in the EU. Then we have things we don't care. They can be elsewhere, so this would be something like where the data along its my assessment or some external necessities reside, and then we have the set of services that have requirements when producing and consuming the data. So actually a new kind of a topology of things we're talking about now.
Coming back to your question, I like arguing with the. Give me 2 minutes. I like arguing with the medical domain again. And coming back to your notion of a niche product. So I know of many also medical, not only engineering groups, but also medical groups who work on technical solutions for, let's say, all kinds of, in the broad sense, artificial molecular communication, sometimes also with respect to very small AI models and so on, but let's say artificial molecular communication. And there are lots of applications which would be extremely helpful. One very important thing is very early detection of signs of cancer, for instance. Medical people say this would be a major breakthrough if we have technologies, in-body technologies, which could detect cancer cells as early as possible, because then you will have a much better chance to stop the illness. And this is something which I wouldn't call a niche product anymore if this becomes successful. Even though my wife would always say, well, the pharma companies, they already have that stuff, but they don't bring it on the market because then they can't make money with their other products. Anyway, let's keep that aside. So maybe Google is not the major player in this field in the next phase. Maybe it's Roche Pharma or something. Yeah, maybe they are the next big IT company in IoT and extreme IoT company in the world.
And I think you painted a picture of sort of the infrastructure as we know it from the last century. I was wondering, once we have edge on satellites, I think basically, obviously, when we think of next generation mobile phone networks, mobile communication networks where base stations are low Earth orbit. And I think this looks at the moment much more real than it did 2 or 3 years ago. So, question back to you, how does this change if we basically move infrastructure-wise our view basically sort of a bit out of the last century into sort of a century where we have infrastructure that is not under control of nation states, where we have infrastructure that's sort of, where also that the link to the infrastructure may be sort of different in a way.
Well, to everything we can think of, there has been a book published by Neil Stephenson, at least that's my personal experience. If you read The Diamond Age, this breaks down in that nations are just a silly overlay, and pretty much everything that is relevant is controlled by hypergiants. I don't want to think about a future like that.
How did the book end?
Later, half past, there will be cocktails and beer. This is something to decide.
I would like to hear your opinion about one not provocative statement, but somewhat provocative. Much of our issues with AI is that we really want to see it as a software. It's our comfort zone. We really like to put everything into black boxes, connect with some, lines, things, whatever, and it's kind of, we know how to control, how to live in that world. We even have human as a service concept, which is, if you think about that, it's pretty stupid, but it's, again, makes us, model our systems very, very naturally. However, if you think about some other people who, of course, experience AI for the first time, they definitely see it as a human. And maybe, the statement that we already have a genital intelligence as a model may actually be a much better one than seeing it as a software. Because those people who see AI as being manipulative, having intention, and things and whatever, of course, it's kind of when you're a scientist, okay, probably this is a bit too much. But as a model, it may actually give us a much better intuitive understanding of do's and don'ts. And again, I'm not suggesting that we have to switch from software, because it's still at the end maybe a software, but conceptual intuitive model, because especially for the policymakers, it's very hard because they take some properties of software and assign it to AI, which is definitely wrong. That's why we have this leakage of abstraction, which creates a lot of difficulties, and we cannot stay with our intuitive model. However, if we accept we already have general intelligence, while it may be too far-fetched, as in terms of discussions in modeling and thinking about it, maybe a lot more, I don't know, more natural, or let's say more constructive.
Well, we were wondering, I think it's a really important point, but I think, I personally think we are very far from these types of intelligence. I think the question, if you are manipulative, that doesn't require AI. I think we can be manipulative with writing, and I think since the last 2,000 years you find stuff where people have manipulated other people in writing. And I think this emergence of intelligence, I think perhaps at some point, and some people said AI is just a few years old, I have been not really hate-love relationship, but I think I looked at AI and then went away a few times. So I did my master's thesis in '96 on AI, on the neural networks, and figured this is not going anywhere. Then came back at some point, and now I think it's a love phase at the moment. But I'm not sure how long this lasts. So
fourth or fifth winter is coming. I mean, AI goes back to 1950.
And I think what we see is basically, as I said earlier, once it's working, it's not AI anymore. Basically, we just build it into product. I think so. Basically, you're upscaling of basically you buy a 8K television. That's incredible AI what's in there to make this basically 1K videos into 8K, and it looks brilliant. But so yeah, I think the marketing at the moment is AI enhanced, but people don't really think of this as AI. As I said earlier, the keyboard that works, even if you type sort of wrong, that's not seen. So I think this question, and I think perhaps we overestimate our own intelligence. And I think this is when you talk a lot to people who write a lot, where you have subjects where input is writing and output is writing, and there's quite a few. And if you look at universities, perhaps we overestimate the intellectual abilities required to do that. And so I would rather go the other way, is taking a text and creating another text based on the first text. Is this general intelligence? And I think if you look at the moment, what are the highest sort of subjects, I think we see a lot in that space, so perhaps we have to rather rethink how intelligent we are.
Maybe just a comment regarding what the concern you raise. I would say why nowadays people are treating this more like a kind of software mind concept is that the requirement engineering, this kind of practice has been with us for so many years, and it's easier by, I would say, organizational kind of policy makers and decision makers to actually set into that kind of mental model to accept the AI going through that. But of course, everybody knows that in the room that in AI actually quality engineering has so many things actually different from just the software type of regime, because the whole data engineering is already by itself a concept, is a subject, which is the baseline for all the AI on top of that, right? So, but then this is actually too difficult. Maybe just like like Albrecht mentions, we probably overestimate the how intelligent we are, especially for those decision makers when they are actually treating how we are actually going to take the AI into the future kind of services that we are going to reshape the development and also deployment in that sense.
Since your comment, I was thinking whether I should resist or not. It's not related to the content of your comment. It's related to the word black box. We don't say that anymore. If you publish an article with IEEE, which I recently did, we got a comment that we please change the word black box because it's not longer allowed in IEEE inclusive language. Please use closed box from now on. Yeah, so make sure that you do that. No black box anymore.
But if we overestimate our capabilities, isn't it a matter of scaredness that we are developing something that we don't know how to control or don't know how to operate? It's something like, I mean, most of the theories that goes around in Reddit is irrelevant.
I guess if people who were scared, they wouldn't do it, either being forced or whatever. I guess the hooray is still too large to see the consequences. And this is the level of discussion which actually matches best with small canapes and a glass of beer, wine, or bubbles in your hand. And well, you can't see, but I can see outside. They actually already started taking photos from the buffet and the arrangement of the classes. So it seems they're ready for us. And with that, I want to thank our three speakers and panelists of this afternoon, and you all for joining the discussion. Thank you very much.
So, someone, please.
Somebody will take a picture of us.
Oh.
Okay, very, very nice. Just that we pretend we have
Deshalb postest du das alles. Okay, got a point.
Jetzt lacht ihr. Now you're laughing.
Mit so netten Leuten.
I hope they.
It's good enough. I think it's just for social media.
Perfect.
Yeah, or whatever.